that took me into web design. And when I was working with web design, I found that I had a lot of customers that wanted to use music and photos that belonged to other people, and they wanted to do it without having to pay for it. And so one of the reasons for my talk is there are rules. There are laws you need to follow. There are things you need to do, and if you don't, people say, oh, nobody ever watches that. Yeah, they do. And if they don't catch you right away, the longer you've been violating what that law is, the more you have to pay. And I do know some people from personal experience that have been caught in that hole. So even when I was doing web design, I was very specific. My websites did not use copyrighted music unless they were willing to pay the royalty fee. They didn't use copyrighted images unless they were willing to follow those laws. So that's one of the things I'll talk about this morning. Did a lot of training. So how does that lead into being a photographer? Well, it's just the photography is my passion, and it's what I do very well. And I love to incorporate it into the things that help present people and their businesses in a way that people will remember them. Now, what do people remember? Think about it. You remember the visuals, whether it's a good visual or a bad visual, it sticks with you. When you think about the Old Spice time, what does that guy have to do with Old Spice deodorant? Nothing. But everybody remembers that ad because they're funny. The ladies remember it because he's awesomely adorable and handsome. And it caught a lot of people's attention, and the TV ads have nothing on what their ads running on the internet do. They put those ads out on YouTube for Old Spice, and they get tons of traffic. So it really doesn't have anything to do with the product, but the imagery has captured so many people's attention, they all know what Old Spice is. And if they're in the grocery store and they can't remember what deodorant they're supposed to buy for their husband or their kid, their son, they're going to buy Old Spice because that's the one they remember. When you're looking at imaging and imagery for your business, you want to brand yourself, and you don't want to have confusion. So while stock photos and clip art have a place, if they're going to be an actual part of your brand, you want something unique. And from my days of doing website design, I was never a clip art or a stock photo fan. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. I just was concerned when my clients wanted to build a logo around clip art or build a logo around a stock photo, because there really isn't any way to differentiate yourself from the other people that use those images. So tell me if you've seen any of these. Have you seen business cards with all of these on here? These are off of Vistaprint. They're beautiful photos. There's nothing wrong with the quality of the photo. But I personally know 8 businesses in my neighborhood that use that business card. So there isn't really any way to take that image and make it uniquely your own. So you want to be able to go out there and you want people to identify the image with your business, and you want it to be able to be recognizable and not get confused with, okay, there's 3 gift basket companies in my neighborhood and they all use this business card, so which one is the one that I know does the good baskets? I'm going to have a hard time remembering that, because that, while it's a beautiful card, isn't going to take care of what I need to help me differentiate which company used it. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is original images versus stock images. And again, while I'm not a huge fan of stock images, they do have their place. A lot of times there's just budget restrictions and those kind of things. But you want to make sure you're using original images if it's actually going to be part of your brand. If it's going to be part of your logo, if it's going to be part of all the marketing you do, and you want it to set you apart. You want people to recognize it and say, oh yeah, I know that logo means that's Mac. That logo means that's Rob. So if you're going to use a photo or a graphic image, you want it to be unique because you want people to immediately identify it with you and not have that confusion, who was this? Who did it come from? If you're showing your specific product, so if you do things like costumes, you do the creative stuff that you do, and it's your work, you probably want to use photographs of your work and not something similar done by someone else. Does that make sense? Now, stock images, if you see a stock photo and you really think that that particular photo captures exactly what you wanted to capture, you can use that photo. Now, most stock photo websites give you the option, a lot of them, to buy an image as unique. Now, you're going to pay for it. You could pay $3,000 to $5,000 for it. but it's part of your branding. If you're going to use it in that capacity, then that's probably a purchase worth making. The same thing with graphic designs. If you're designing a logo for someone and they want you to use clip art instead, you guys know how that works. Clip art's great, but clip art is open source. Anybody can use the clip art. You want to make sure that the identity being associated with that goes with that person and not with someone else. Budget is a huge consideration. There are lots of businesses that say, I can't spend $5,000 on my brand identity. Understandable. You just want to make sure that you're working with images that aren't super common to everybody else, what everybody else is using. And if you don't need the uniqueness, if you're just trying to show something on your website that's not necessarily associated with your branding, stock stuff is pretty good for that. And again, if you're a startup, you're just kind of testing the waters. But like I said, from my background from before, I'm not a big fan of the stock stuff, but it does have its place, it does serve its purpose, and it's popular for a reason. So you want to gauge the impression your photos are making on your business. So just for fun, I pulled up some websites. And I'm going to pick on my brother because this is my brother. He owns a recording studio in Omaha, and he calls it Moose Lodge. Now, there's not a moose within 1,000 miles of Omaha, but that's what he likes. And because I know him, this is a very good image of him. This is how he is. And the people that know him and know the kind of work that he does, he's a musician, he's a videographer, he's very creative. This kind of imagery works really well. He also is a photographer, so he took pictures of his studio, and all of the photographs on his site are done either by him or his wife, who is also an amazing photographer. I only pulled up one. But he's showing the equipment he uses in his studio, which is awesome. He took it himself, he staged it himself, and it shows people, when you come work with me in my studio, this is what I have to offer you, and that's what his website shows with the photos. So that makes sense. Stock photos could serve a purpose there, but if they really want to see what he has to offer in his studio before they get there, him taking the pictures in the studio makes sense. This is a gentleman that does computer consulting. He does a lot of remote work. He actually takes care of my computers for me. And stock imaging works really well with this. I mean, he's a computer repair guy. You don't necessarily have to have specific images of the computers in your house or in your office to show that you do computers. So stock images work great for something like this. And I love Blake's soprano look. So he's a coach, he's a speaker, he is very successful. And you definitely, when you're in that kind of a realm where you're putting yourself out there as your service and what you have to offer, you want to use really professional photos and you want them to be representative. So this is his very professional side, and then this is his more personal side where he's talking about his background. So using those kind of photos are much better than just having stock photos of a meeting room or a seminar. You want to gear it towards the business. Crowd Apparel does, I can't think of the term. Like you get the shirts and you get the items. So
screen print.
Thank you. So the images that they use, a lot of them are out of the catalog that they order from, which is great because it shows people an example of what they have to offer without him necessarily running through the store and taking pictures of what he has in stock. So it's kind of stock photos from that organization, and that again makes sense. Why pay someone like me to go in and take pictures of everything he has in his building if it's stuff they're going to order out of the catalog? The catalog's got all of that. They already have that imagery. Now for something like this is Creative Counseling Center. They work with kids as young as 2 all the way up to adults, helping them with trauma and special issues. So having stock photos for a site like this is going to make more sense because you really don't want to get into that sensitive area of putting pictures of your clients out there, even with their permission, especially if you're working with kids and adolescents. You want to give images that give you that trust factor and help you build. People will be more understanding of what you do without actually using your clients. So there's great stock photos that do that kind of stuff. And that's the owner on the right there. Order Transitions comes in and they're organizers. They come in and clean up your house, your garage, your life, help you get organized. And so You could use stock images for something like this. I believe Paul has gone in and taken pictures of befores and afters, which is also very, it really lets people see the differences that he can make. And I at first thought these were stock photos, but those two individuals are quite a bit throughout his website, so I think they're lines that agreed to be in there. But you could use stock photos for that. So you can kind of go back and forth and hit, mix and match. It depends on what impression you want to make and whether the photos that are out there can make that impression for you. And that's something you don't want to have it on. If it's not hitting you, it's probably not going to make the impression you think it's going to make to your prospective clients. So what impression do you want to make? You want to think about what is it that I want the images that I'm using to say about me, about my business, about what I have to offer. And when you're doing that, you want to get some feedback, because a lot of times what you think you're seeing is what you're looking for versus what you're actually seeing. So you want to get some people to look at this for you. A lot of people have family and friends do that, and depending on your family and friends, they either don't want to hurt your feelings, so they're not going to tell you anything negative, or they like to be super critical, and they're going to tell you they're going to be more critical than might call for. So pick your people carefully. Find someone that you know will give you honest feedback, and it could be someone that you know but you don't know real well, and just say, I'm getting ready to use these images on my website. What do you think? What does it say to you? And find out if what they see is what you are trying to convey. But don't, especially after you've looked at it 5 or 10 times and you've gone through photos, you start putting impressions from up here into what you're seeing, and that's not always going to work. So you want to make sure that the impression you think you're making is actually normal. So there's some do's and don'ts. And for the do's, you want to follow the licensing agreements. So when you get out into those stock photo sites, or when you're working with photographers or other groups that own images, usually those images come with a licensing agreement. You want to read those. You want to make sure that you're following the usage for that particular image. And sometimes they vary depending on the image. So you want to make sure that if you're putting a website together for a client, or you're doing marketing materials, or even if you're doing it for yourself, that you don't put them or yourself in harm's way by misusing, make sure you understand the license. And I've come across a couple where we thought we were okay to use them and we weren't, so we backed them out. We found out before we went live, which was nice, so there wasn't a fine or anything, but you want to make sure you're not putting yourself in harm's way. If you're using a friend or an acquaintance's work, and they're being nice and giving it to you for free, find a way to give them credit for the work on the site or in the materials. Because if they're not being compensated at all, the least you can do is get exposure. And it doesn't have to be massive print, it just may be underneath the photo by, or if it's a drawing or a design by, so that people understand where that came from, and if they're looking for that similar kind of work, they can find out how to get a hold of it. So that's just kind of a nice reciprocal thing that you can do. If they're giving you the help, you can put that help back. Don't go out to a website like I did for the iPad and right-click on the image and save it. Even if it allows you to do that, that's coming from someone else's work. And you guys that do design now understand how that works. But you don't want to, even if it's a stock photo, don't right-click and download it and put it onto something else, because it does belong to someone else. It was used by someone else, and it probably has a licensing agreement that goes along with it, even if it was free. So it would be like a customer saying, I really like that person's website, can you make a copy of that? You would never do that. So you wouldn't want to take the images off of someone else's site and use for the same thing. So, even though it allows you to, because if it's not set up so it's blocked, you just don't want to do that. So keep that in mind when you're working on your own stuff, or you're working with someone and you want to say, I want that picture. You may not be able to have it for free. You want to go through the right process. And you don't want to ignore the licensing agreements, and you do want to give credit. There are some in the iStock places. I went out to iStock Photo and there was an image that I liked, and at the bottom it said this image is free, but if you use this image you need to put this verbiage underneath it. You want to do that. If you're getting stuff for free or you're not paying much for it, you want to follow all of the stuff that goes along with it. Number one, because what you put out comes back, so if you're cheating on how you're doing this, then you're going to cheat the result that you're going to get. You just want to make sure you're just following the rules all the way.